A college sophomore finished her shift at the cafeteria and decided to go for a hike. She got dressed, said goodbye to her roommate, and hitchhiked a ride to the start of a trail. The 18-year-old girl met some hikers who were coming back and asked them for directions. It was getting dark, but the student pressed on, and she was never seen again. Her name was Paula Jean Weldon, and she went missing in 1946. She was walking along a trail near Bennington, a town in southwestern Vermont. The next day, her roommate reported her missing. The authorities quickly organized a search party. Hundreds of people searched the woodlands around the trail for 4 weeks. Her college even shut down for a while so students and faculty staff could join the search. They came back empty. The girl had disappeared into thin air. Paula didn't pack a bag. She didn't take any extra clothes or money. All the evidence suggested she didn't expect to be out for more than a couple of hours. Her father was a well-known industrial engineer. He blamed the county sheriff for poorly conducting the investigation. Despite all the efforts, the poor girl was still nowhere to be found. Her case remains unsolved to this day. But this is not the first time someone went missing in Vermont's forests. A year earlier, Mitty Rivers, a lively 74-year-old man, was the guide for a group of 4 hunters. He reached a fork in the road with his son-in-law. Mitty said he would walk a short distance down one of the paths. After all, he didn't want to miss lunchtime back at the camp. But that was the last time anyone had saw him. The group he had accompanied searched for the man all afternoon before calling the police. A more extensive search followed, but it didn't yield any results. The local man was an experienced hiker, and he was well familiar with the trail. Still, he had gone missing. Firefighters, volunteers, and even servicemen couldn't find the missing person after a month of searching. All that they found was a cartridge he dropped in a nearby stream. The local authorities still haven't solved the case. Nobody knew at the time, but Mitty and Paula were just the beginning. In just half a decade, 5 people in total disappeared in this part of Vermont. Years went by, but still nobody could explain their disappearances. And that's why the area got its name, the Bennington Triangle, after the famous Bermuda Triangle, where ships and planes have been disappearing for centuries. In 1949, the most puzzling disappearance happened in the Bennington Triangle. A 68-year-old veteran boarded a local bus. He was going home after visiting his relatives in St. Albans. His family took him to the bus station, and there were 14 witnesses who claimed he was still on it at the last stop before Bennington. But he never got off the bus there. His luggage was still on the rack, and an open bus timetable sat on his empty seat. The man had apparently vanished into thin air while on a moving bus. And there's another weird thing. He disappeared on the exact same date the college student went missing 3 years ago. The youngest person to mysteriously vanish was an 8-year-old. He was with his mother while she worked on the family farm. She went to feed the pigs and left her son alone for an hour or so. When she came back, the woman couldn't find her son. The locals soon formed search parties, and the local sheriff brought in tracking dogs. They picked up the scent, but lost it suddenly at a nearby crossroads. The guy was never found. Again, there was a strange element to this story. The youngster was wearing a bright red jacket. This would have made him more visible to the rescuers. But more strikingly, Paula, the college sophomore who disappeared 4 years earlier, also had a red jacket. The final disappearance happened just 16 days after the little fella vanished from the farm. A 53-year-old woman was camping with her family in the Green Mountain National Forest. She went for a hike with her cousin, but there was a mishap. The woman fell into a stream. She decided to go back to the camp to change clothes. Her cousin thought she would join him later and continued along the path alone, but the woman never came back. In fact, she never reached their base camp. For 2 weeks, 300 searchers scouted the woods. They brought in helicopters, but found no trace of the unfortunate woman. The last disappearance in the Bennington Triangle had an ending. Not a happy one, though. In the spring of the following year, the searchers found the poor camper 3.5 miles from the original campsite. They had previously covered that spot, which made it only more mysterious. It was impossible to determine why and what happened to her. The only thing these 5 disappearances have in common is the period of time and the geographic area. 36 square miles of thick woods in the southwest of Vermont. This remote area of Green Mountains wasn't the happiest of places. Bennington and the nearby village of Glastonbury were founded as mining and logging towns. The living conditions were harsh. Near the end of the 19th century, the locals tried to rebrand the area as a tourist destination, but the mountain was unstable and a huge flood washed away their dreams of a happy life. Residents started moving out. In 2010, only 8 people lived in Glastonbury. It became a ghost town. In the late 1940s, the area was back in the spotlight for all the wrong reasons. But how could these disappearances have remained a mystery for so long? Surely someone had a reasonable explanation. One theory suggests that it was a case of foul play. Maybe an unknown person was up to no good and harmed the unsuspecting people. But then there would have been a pattern, and there is none. Or maybe the elements were responsible. The college student went missing on a pleasant day at the very beginning of winter. She was lightly dressed because it was 50 degrees Fahrenheit outside. But in the evening, the air temperature plummeted. It was a freezing 9 degrees Fahrenheit the following morning. In this part of Vermont, the weather is quite unpredictable. It can get really windy, especially in winter. Perhaps the bad weather and the dense forest confused the missing people. Recently, a strikingly similar case of disappearance happened here. A college student got lost in heavy fog at the top of Glastonbury Mountain. When he didn't return home, his fiancée called the police. State troopers immediately went out to look for him, but it was too dark and foggy to see anything. Luckily, they found him the next morning. He got lost because of the thick fog. He managed to find his way back to the trail only after the weather conditions improved. This story had a happy ending. But could this incident explain what happened to the people who disappeared over 70 years ago? The mountains around Bennington are full of abandoned mine shafts, a reminder of the town's history. A hiker lost in fog could easily fall into one of these wells. They could have no way of getting out. The area is so remote that no one would ever find them. The second danger are wild animals. Black bears are native to New England. Local hiking clubs advise visitors to store their food in special boxes, not to attract bears. The Green Mountain National Forest sits in the middle of the Bennington Triangle. Today, this popular recreation area is within a day's drive of 70 million people. People come here to camp, hike, and ride mountain bikes. But do all of them know about the 5 mysterious disappearances? I guess I wouldn't dare venture into this remote patch of Vermont's wilderness now. You've just moved to the Romanian city of Cluj-Napoca to make a startup, but you still have no idea what kind of horror will happen to you. In this city, you meet new people, and they tell you the story of the mysterious Hoia Baciu forest located to the west of the city. They say it's the country's scariest place, and locals call it the Bermuda Triangle of Transylvania. After the meeting, you decide to check out of this place. You drive to the edge of the forest. You go into the thicket and hear some singing of birds and the chirping of crickets. Somewhere in the distance, branches crackle and some animal howls. Some trees look ominous. Their branches look like many crooked arms. It seems to you that someone is watching you. You take a few more steps and find yourself in a small clearing. This is a perfect circle with grass, but no trees are growing here for some reason. You hear a moan from above. You look up and see a bright light within the trees. It gets brighter and brighter. And you lose consciousness. You're walking through the forest. It's already dark. You're cold, but fortunately, you can see the road ahead and your car. You come home, open the door, and look at the wall clock. This is strange. It's 10 p.m. now. You drove to the forest at 5 p.m., then took a little walk in the woods. Where did a few hours go? Then you notice something weird. There are strange red spots on your left hand. Are these burns or some rash? You go to the mirror and see that there's still a strange rash on your legs, arms, and neck. You tell your new friends about it, but they don't look surprised. They say that most legends about this forest are associated with time travel and memory lapses. Some say that they don't remember how they spent several hours in the forest and what they did there. Others talk about a strange rash on their hands. There are legends that the ghosts of lost people wander there, and some flying objects often visit this place. Someone said they had heard an ominous whisper in the forest and seen flying heads without bodies. The most famous legend says about a 5-year-old girl who disappeared in the forest. Rescuers and locals searched for her in the woods for several weeks, but found nothing. Then, a few years later, the girl came out of the forest alive and well, but the strangest thing is that she hadn't aged at all. She remained the same 5-year-old girl. After that, people began to think there was a time portal in the forest. If someone gets there, they'll find themselves in the future. It can be several hours or several years. Another myth is about a biologist who photographed the local fauna in the forest. He was taking photos of flowers and trees and caught on camera a strange object that flew in the sky. After that, people were sure that beings of extraterrestrial civilizations visited the forest. In the 15th century, a woman also disappeared there, but 500 years later, she came out of the forest completely healthy. Of course, it's unlikely that she was that woman. But a coin dated to the 1600s was found in her pocket. All these stories, as well as reports about phantoms, are rumors and myths. No one has yet been able to prove that the forest is really the center of paranormal activity. But if you decide to visit this place, ask local farmers who live near the forest to share some stories with you. Perhaps they'll tell you something more creepy and truthful. But this forest is really scary. You may feel anxious and inexplicable panic. There are many videos on the internet where tourists and travelers visited this forest and talked about unpleasant excitement and strange sounds. Also, you can see something strange in the woods at any moment with your own eyes. This is a round clearing where, for some reason, trees don't grow. There's grass and plants here. The soil here is the same as in the rest of the forest. Scientists took an analysis of the ground to check this. It's still unknown why there's no trees. Some trees in the forest have a strange curved shape. It's unclear what made them grow this way, but they look creepy. You can take a walk in the forest and check how true the legends about it are. But don't be afraid, you won't be alone. The Hoia Baciu Forest is one of Romania's most popular tourist destinations. Every year, thousands of fans of mystical riddles come here to test their nerves. But even if you don't find anything mystical in the forest, you will definitely enjoy the city. Externally, it's a beautiful city with cozy European architecture. But go inside the buildings and you'll see modern stylish bars and cafes. This place also attracts many IT specialists. You've probably heard of forests where some guy decorated all the trees with sinister dolls. But all this will seem like fun toys compared to what one guy found in County Park in Huntington, New York. He was walking in the forest and came to a small clearing. There, many trees had attached photos with images of people who were missing, just a person's face with his name, date, and place of disappearance. The guy recorded this place on video and posted it on the internet. The video became popular on Reddit. Its users discovered that all these people from photos went missing in different states. None of them were found alive. After such a terrible walk, the guy called the police. Soon, they found out that one local hung these photos on trees during a Halloween party. At the request of the police, he removed all the pictures. The case was closed. Imagine, you're lost in the woods. You've been walking in the forest for several hours. You tie your scarf to a tree branch and walk further along the narrow path. Half an hour later, you come to the tree with a scarf. You've never turned left or right. But why are you walking in circles then? The answer is a round forest. There's nothing mystical here, but it still attracts the attention of many tourists. The forest grows in the south of Japan. If you look at it from a bird's eye view, you'll see that trees grow in a circle, forming several layers. The closer to the center of this circle, the closer the trees are placed to each other. It resembles mysterious circular patterns in fields worldwide, but there's nothing fantastic here. No spaceships from another planet and no natural anomaly made this, but people. In 1973, people planted trees in the shape of 10 concentric circles. It was an experiment that showed how cedars would grow in such unusual conditions. The trees began to grow in a convex shape, symmetrically fanning out. This proved that the size of the gaps between the trees affects their growth. Initially, according to the plan, people had to cut down trees, but the place became popular among tourists. Its photo quickly spread throughout the internet, so people decided to leave it untouched. You can also visit this forest and take beautiful drone shots.
The SCP Foundation is a secret organization that has one goal: to secure, contain, and protect the world from bizarre creatures and objects. The secret bases of this organization are hidden all over the world, and each of them contains scary, dangerous, harmless, miraculous, and simply crazy objects. And now, you'll see some of the weirdest. Object SCP-410. This is a colony of 14 individual beetles, similar to Scarabaeus of different colors, from light blue to dark emerald. At first glance, they look like ordinary insects, but soon you notice that these bugs don't feed on leaves, larvae, and other food. They eat mistakes in a text.
What?
Put a paper with some text containing spelling or grammar mistakes and syntactic errors inside the terrarium with object SCP-410. The bugs run up to misspelled words or punctuation errors and eat them. 20 minutes later, the beetles secrete corrected letters or words from their bodies. This way, they completely edit the text. One member of SCP-410 can eat about 25,000 errors per day. The beetles can live without incorrect texts for about 2 days. Then they fall into a state of hibernation. To revive them, you need to put a text containing at least 50 errors next to them. Object SCP-2157 is a mysterious 200 square foot piece of land found in a forest in Japan. People are standing in different poses on this territory. 20 men and 21 women. They're all of different weights and heights. Their feet are on the ground, and their faces are turned to the west. People react to external stimuli. They blink, flinch, and get scared. And still, they're standing there, motionless like trees. They start screaming if somebody tries to lift them off the ground. But soil analysis has shown that SCP-2157 objects have no physical connection to the land. Their feet are in no way connected to the soil. A body scan has shown some earth inside their stomach. As soon as an SCP Foundation employee enters their territory, the people turn their heads in their direction and just stare at them. As soon as the outsider leaves, the people start looking to the west again. Monitoring of this object continues. Object SCP-621. It's hypnotic tulips. They look like ordinary tulips, but have bioluminescence. They get energy and other nutrients from the water and glow purple, blue, or green. This glow has a hypnotic effect on people and all nearby living beings. Bees, for example, start pollinating only these flowers, ignoring all other plants, which speeds up the reproduction of the tulips. Herbivores and other natural enemies avoid SCP-621. All this makes tulips a rapidly spreading species. While growing, SCP-621 takes all the nutrients from other plants growing nearby. It depletes the soil and consumes a lot of water. Under the influence of SCP-621, A person tends to take care of the plants and do everything to make them live as long as possible. For example, owners of large fields only take care of the tulips and ignore the rest of their farmlands under the influence of the glow.
Oh God, oh God.
Thus, tulips can spread until they capture all territories, and people will treat them with love because of their hypnotic effect. Therefore, it's crucial to keep tulips in an isolated greenhouse. Employees of the SCP Foundation water them every day and don't allow them to get out of the area. Object SCP-2559-J. While conducting research in one of the laboratories, a scientist accidentally opened a portal to another dimension. Little kittens began to come out of this portal in an endless stream. There's an infinitely huge world of kittens on the other side. If you pick up one of them, it will turn out to be an ordinary little kitty. The portal is located deep underground. It's not yet known how to close it. As a person approaches the doorway, they find themselves under the influence of cute kittens. Now, they're falling out into our reality at a rate of 3 kittens per second. SCP-999 is a large moving mass of transparent orange slime. It looks like jelly and has the viscosity of peanut butter. The shape and size of the creature are constantly changing. The object's surface is covered with a thin, flexible membrane that prevents the mass from spreading in different directions. It's a friendly creature that likes to play with people.
So cute.
It jumps on a person, hugs them, and makes gurgling sounds. SCP-999 emits a pleasant and constantly changing odor. It can be the smell of bacon, or fresh bedding, or roses. Touching SCP-999 causes euphoria that increases with the duration of contact. After that, a person experiences happiness for a long time. The object likes to completely envelop people and tickle them from head to heels. Object SCP-831 is a colony of unknown insects, similar in appearance and properties to ordinary termites. They feed on cellulose and water with sucrose. One termite lives from 25 to 40 days. The colony should remain in an empty, bright room under constant supervision. The walls and floor in the room should be made of high-strength steel. Employees should pour water with nutrients on the floor to maintain the life of these termites. You can only enter the room in a protective suit. When the termites get access to any object, they begin to use it to make the most primitive tools. For example, if you put a pencil in a room, termites will extract graphite and use the wooden body to create chips or something else. If you constantly feed it, the colony will grow and multiply. It will use primitive tools to create modern technologies. These termites know the properties of all substances and understand how to use them to create inventions. With the help of knowledge of the laws of physics and chemistry, and using wood and graphite from the pencil, in a few days, termites can create a primitive steam engine. The longer they stay in some place, and the more they multiply, the more perfect the inventions will be.
Oh, yeah.
A colony of millions of termites can create high-tech machines or radio transmitters that are incomprehensible to people. The boundaries of inventions are unknown, but the results of their work surpass all human technologies. This is why SCP Foundation employees keep SCP-831 in an enclosed, empty room. Object SCP-1689. It's a big bag of potatoes. In stable condition, it weighs about 110 pounds. There are about 200 tubers of ordinary potatoes inside. The inner space of the bag is much larger than it looks from the outside. The size of this area is unknown, but it's completely filled with potatoes. It's impossible to determine where the bag ends.
Oh my god.
SCP Foundation employees once went on an expedition inside the bag. Scientists created a special paste that broke down starch and turned potatoes into liquid slush. This way, the employees made a tunnel for themselves by spraying the substance and raking potato muck with shovels. That's when they found out that the space had a concrete floor, concrete walls, and a ceiling. They were walking inside some kind of building filled with potatoes. The team punched a hole in the wall and left the construction. The ground was covered with dried grass. There were only potatoes around. What was at the top was unknown, since the entire space was filled with potatoes. They also found a rusty bicycle there. The expedition failed. SCP-1689 leads to a world similar to ours, but something happened there, and it began to fill up with potatoes. Object SCP-623. This is a small room built in the 60s by a professor of biochemistry. There are only these items in the room: one blue sofa, one red sofa, one green sofa, one white plastic chair, one round table decorated in the same colors as the sofas, 7 chairs around the round table, and 7 multicolored lighting fixtures. All the furniture is nailed to the floor. Strange patterns are painted on the walls. They perfectly match the style and the location of the furniture. The acoustics and the appearance of the room, as well as the arrangements of all the objects, have a strong, pleasant effect on a person.
Oh, yes.
Inside the room, people feel harmony and happiness. They relax and become kind and harmless. Because of the feeling of peace and serenity, people can't take the furniture out of the room. They just want to dance, laugh, hug the table, lie on the floor, and cry with joy. But as soon as they leave the room, they immediately become angry, aggressive, and sad. The real world outside the room seems to be a dangerous and dark place. If you stay inside the object for more than a few minutes and then go out, you can lose your mind.
This may sound mind-boggling, but scientists found a 385-million-year-old root network. Yeah, it's like a fossilized web of roots that's got them all excited. They're reimagining what the world's first forest might have looked like, and let me tell you, it's not what you'd expect. Under an old highway department quarry near Cairo, New York, they found the remains of a mighty and mature old-growth forest. This place was home to at least 3 of the world's earliest tree-like plants, but these plants, in fact, looked nothing like trees. One of them looked like giant stalks of celery. The second type resembled pine trees with hairy fern-like fronds for leaves. And the third plant was like a palm tree with a bulbous base and fern-like branches. It's like they couldn't decide what they wanted to be when they grew up. But here's the kicker. These primordial trees were quite old and large, so they weren't packed densely together. They were relatively scattered across a floodplain that ebbed and flowed with the seasons. And even though dry periods were a regular part of the cycle, these tree-like plants thrived in semi-arid conditions. Their roots had adapted to the possibility of short-term flooding, which is confusing because they're not supposed to survive in those conditions. But wait, it gets even weirder. Other trees in the area came more prepared for bouts of water scarcity. There were extinct pine tree-like plants with deeper root systems that could spread 36 feet wide and 23 feet deep. These guys were more advanced than the fern-like trees and had true leaves that could photosynthesize. It's like they were showing off or something. So why did the fern-like trees dominate prehistoric deltas, while the pine-like trees dominated the floodplains? It's like they didn't even care about setting up near rivers or water sources that could carry their genes farther afield. Maybe they were just rebels without a cause, doing their own thing and not caring what anyone else thought. In any case, this finding has got evolutionary ecologists all excited. They're saying that the earliest trees could colonize a range of environments and weren't limited to wet areas. Who knew trees were so versatile?
One guy was walking in the forest of County Park in Huntington, New York. He came to a mysterious small area where he found cans of leftover food and a dirty blanket on the ground. Broken branches lay nearby, folded into a strange shape resembling a cage. And almost every tree had A4 sheets of paper hanging on it. There were about 10 sheets in total. Someone carelessly stuck them to the trunks with duct tape. All these sheets had photos of missing people and some information about their disappearance, a city where a person had vanished, and the local police phone number. The guy got scared and ran away. But before that, he filmed everything on his phone. He posted the video on the internet. And after that, Reddit users started their own investigation. It turned out All those people whose faces were printed on the posters were really missing. The man who discovered this place called the police. Fortunately, the officers quickly found the person who had done this. He threw a Halloween party and decided to hang posters of missing people to create a scary atmosphere. He removed all the photos, and the police stopped the investigation. Do you know these guys standing in the streets and holding a free hugs sign? Oh, it's so cute. They give so many positive vibes to people. And now, imagine you're walking through a dark forest alone, in the fog, and somewhere in the thicket, you notice a small gray house. It's hidden in the foliage and looks like an entrance to a bunker. It has no windows, only a dark doorway leading into the darkness. And you see that someone wrote, "Free Hugs Hut" on the wall. Yeah, not so cute this time. The exact location of this hut is unknown, but it's somewhere in the forests of Wisconsin. In fact, there's nothing terrible inside. Some garbage, dry leaves, cobwebs, and moss. Teenagers or homeless people like to hang out in this hut. Some of them probably had a good sense of humor if they wrote this phrase on the wall. But imagine if a scary, pale old woman had been living there for years. She'd be waiting for you inside to hug you tightly with her long, thin arms. We're in Greenville, South Carolina. There's a forest next to this town. You go there and notice a silhouette of a man. It's a big, sinister clown. You freeze in fear. He's just standing there among the trees and looking at you, smiling. Your knees are shaking. You're sweating. The clown raises his hand and beckons you with his finger. You don't go, and the clown makes a sad grimace. Then he takes some money out of his pocket and shows it to you. You finally return control over your body and run away from the forest as fast as you can. The scariest thing is that there are several such clowns in the woods of Greenville. Many locals have seen them walking among trees, attracting people's attention with green laser pointers. Fortunately, instead of approaching them, residents went to the police station. The clowns called people to an abandoned house in the woods. Officers searched the building, but found nothing suspicious there. Still, locals prefer to avoid the forest. In forests, you can not only see, but also hear something terrible. For example, you can hear people's screams. These sounds come from nowhere and only at night. They can drive you mad if you don't know their nature. Coyotes live in forests all over North America, Canada, and Mexico. In the winter and spring, these animals howl and scream. Even if one coyote does it, it may seem that several of them have surrounded you. This illusion occurs because there are many different sounds in the forest. Birds, animals, the sound of falling rain, all this mixes with the coyotes howling, and it may seem to you that these animals are everywhere. Also, coyotes can change the tones of their voices and sound like people. Now let's forget about creepy things and find something beautiful in the woods. You're in a wide green clearing surrounded by a dense forest. You approach the thicket and see a hole in it. It's not a huge hollow, but a perfectly round passage. It looks like a portal to a magical land, and it's the creation of a famous Finnish artist named Antti Laitinen. He carefully cut the leaves and branches of the surrounding trees to create the perfect circle. He called it Broken Landscape. Besides this hole, the artist has many other unique works. He almost always deals with nature. He has created similar small circles resembling suns in the dense branches of leafless trees. You don't need to travel all over the world to see them. You can find photos of almost all of the artist's works on the internet. Let's move to the green forests of Scotland. Walking among trees and bushes, you can come across human figures. They stand motionless and faceless and reflect everything around them, quite literally. The famous Scottish sculptor Rob Mulholland made these statues out of plexiglass. This is a special kind of glass that reflects light like a mirror. 6 sculptures make up a large vestige installation. Each figure is in a different pose. They reflect trees, bushes, and grass, merging with the forest. In summer, when everything is blooming, the figures are beautiful. But in early spring or late autumn, they reflect nothing but grayness and lifelessness, which makes them look pretty creepy. The sculptor wanted to show a trace of people who lived in the forests many years ago, when humanity was more connected to nature. At that time, survival strongly depended on the state of forests and harvests, and these statues show this unity with the woods. There's a stunning forest in the south of Japan. There are no strange things there. It's weird by itself. If you look at the forest from a height, you'll see that the trees there grow in concentric circles. There are several of them. The closer to the center of this area, the closer the trees are standing to each other. In the outer row, the trees don't grow densely. The whole area resembles mysterious circular patterns in fields all over the world. But this is not a natural anomaly, but the result of human intervention. In 1973, people planted trees so that they created 10 concentric circles. The main idea of this experiment was to find out how cedars could grow in such circular conditions. The researchers called this place experimental forestry. Surprisingly, the trees began to grow in a convex shape, symmetrically fanning out. This proved that the size of the gaps between the trees greatly affected their growth. Initially, the scientists planned to cut the trees down after the experiment was over, but the place became very popular with tourists. People love to walk along these trails and take beautiful pictures using drones. The next strange finding is in the US. This is Vashon Highway, surrounded by a large forest. In its thicket, you can find an unusual tree with a rusty red bicycle inside its trunk. It looks like it grew into the trunk and became a part of it. Only the handlebars and one of the wheels stick out of the bark. The bike got into this tree in the 50s. One young guy received it as a present for his birthday, but he didn't like its handlebars and rugged wheels. So he just left this present near a bush and never came back for it. The bush turned out to be a young tree. With time, its trunk expanded and grew around the iron body of the bicycle. When locals noticed this, they decided not to remove the bike from the tree. And they did right, since this place became popular among tourists.
You've just moved to the Romanian city of Cluj-Napoca to make a startup, but you still have no idea what kind of horror will happen to you. In this city, you meet new people, and they tell you the story of the mysterious Hoia Baciu forest located to the west of the city. They say it's the country's scariest place, and locals call it the Bermuda Triangle of Transylvania. After the meeting, you decide to check out of this place. You drive to the edge of the forest. You go into the thicket and hear some singing of birds and the chirping of crickets. Somewhere in the distance, branches crackle and some animal howls. Some trees look ominous. Their branches look like many crooked arms. It seems to you that someone is watching you. You take a few more steps and find yourself in a small clearing. This is a perfect circle with grass, but no trees are growing here for some reason. You hear a moan from above. You look up and see a bright light within the trees. It gets brighter and brighter. And you lose consciousness. You're walking through the forest. It's already dark. You're cold, but fortunately, you can see the road ahead and your car. You come home, open the door, and look at the wall clock. This is strange. It's 10 p.m. now. You drove to the forest at 5 p.m., then took a little walk in the woods. Where did a few hours go? Then you notice something weird. There are strange red spots on your left hand. Are these burns or some rash? You go to the mirror and see that there's still a strange rash on your legs, arms, and neck. You tell your new friends about it, but they don't look surprised. They say that most legends about this forest are associated with time travel and memory lapses. Some say that they don't remember how they spent several hours in the forest and what they did there. Others talk about a strange rash on their hands. There are legends that the ghosts of lost people wander there, and some flying objects often visit this place. Someone said they had heard an ominous whisper in the forest and seen flying heads without bodies. The most famous legend says about a 5-year-old girl who disappeared in the forest. Rescuers and locals searched for her in the woods for several weeks, but found nothing. Then, a few years later, the girl came out of the forest alive and well, but the strangest thing is that she hadn't aged at all. She remained the same 5-year-old girl. After that, people began to think there was a time portal in the forest. If someone gets there, they'll find themselves in the future. It can be several hours or several years. Another myth is about a biologist who photographed the local fauna in the forest. He was taking photos of flowers and trees and caught on camera a strange object that flew in the sky. After that, people were sure that beings of extraterrestrial civilizations visited the forest. In the 15th century, a woman also disappeared there, but 500 years later, she came out of the forest completely healthy. Of course, it's unlikely that she was that woman. But a coin dated to the 1600s was found in her pocket. All these stories, as well as reports about phantoms, are rumors and myths. No one has yet been able to prove that the forest is really the center of paranormal activity. But if you decide to visit this place, ask local farmers who live near the forest to share some stories with you. Perhaps they'll tell you something more creepy and truthful. But this forest is really scary. You may feel anxious and inexplicable panic. There are many videos on the internet where tourists and travelers visited this forest and talked about unpleasant excitement and strange sounds. Also, you can see something strange in the woods at any moment with your own eyes. This is a round clearing where, for some reason, trees don't grow. There's grass and plants here. The soil here is the same as in the rest of the forest. Scientists took an analysis of the ground to check this. It's still unknown why there's no trees. Some trees in the forest have a strange curved shape. It's unclear what made them grow this way, but they look creepy. You can take a walk in the forest and check how true the legends about it are. But don't be afraid, you won't be alone. The Hoia Baciu Forest is one of Romania's most popular tourist destinations. Every year, thousands of fans of mystical riddles come here to test their nerves. But even if you don't find anything mystical in the forest, you will definitely enjoy the city. Externally, it's a beautiful city with cozy European architecture. But go inside the buildings and you'll see modern stylish bars and cafes. This place also attracts many IT specialists. You've probably heard of forests where some guy decorated all the trees with sinister dolls. But all this will seem like fun toys compared to what one guy found in County Park in Huntington, New York. He was walking in the forest and came to a small clearing. There, many trees had attached photos with images of people who were missing, just a person's face with his name, date, and place of disappearance. The guy recorded this place on video and posted it on the internet. The video became popular on Reddit. Its users discovered that all these people from photos went missing in different states. None of them were found alive. After such a terrible walk, the guy called the police. Soon, they found out that one local hung these photos on trees during a Halloween party. At the request of the police, he removed all the pictures. The case was closed. Imagine, you're lost in the woods. You've been walking in the forest for several hours. You tie your scarf to a tree branch and walk further along the narrow path. Half an hour later, you come to the tree with the scarf. You've never turned left or right. But why are you walking in circles then? The answer is a round forest. There's nothing mystical here, but it still attracts the attention of many tourists. The forest grows in the south of Japan. If you look at it from a bird's eye view, you'll see that trees grow in a circle, forming several layers. The closer to the center of this circle, the closer the trees are placed to each other. It resembles mysterious circular patterns in fields worldwide, but there's nothing fantastic here. No spaceships from another planet and no natural anomaly made this, but people. In 1973, people planted trees in the shape of 10 concentric circles. It was an experiment that showed how cedars would grow in such unusual conditions. The trees began to grow in a convex shape, symmetrically fanning out. This proved that the size of the gaps between the trees affects their growth. Initially, according to the plan, people had to cut down trees, but the place became popular among tourists. Its photo quickly spread throughout the internet, so people decided to leave it untouched. You can also visit this forest and take beautiful drone shots. 50 ships and 20 airplanes have gone missing. Many people have disappeared, and mysterious forces might have... Oh wait, the wrong script. This Bermuda Triangle is located in Transylvania. My bad. So, once upon a time in the heart of Transylvania, there was a mysterious place that people named the Bermuda Triangle of Transylvania. Look at these twisted trees and their tangled undergrowth. It seems like some evil creature may appear from behind a tree at any moment. There might even be ghosts and mysterious creatures that came from space, as stories said. The forest became so popular in the 1960s when a man was chilling there on a warm August afternoon with his girlfriend and a couple of friends. Suddenly, his girlfriend pointed at something unusual in the sky. A man came closer to the spot where she was standing and, to his surprise, saw it too. It was a weird silver disc shining in the sky. He quickly pulled out his camera and took 4 photos before the creepy object bolted away. The object was there for a mere 2 minutes, but the man developed his film and the picture ended up being published in local papers. Many people were skeptical about this. They claimed that those were most likely some weather balloons that looked like a spaceship because they were photographed in odd lighting. But no weather balloons, blimps, or any other objects were in the sky above the forest on that day. Spooky, huh? That's not the only campfire legend from that area. Stories say that those who ventured too deep into the murky depths of this creepy place often did not return, which is how it got its nickname in the first place. There was a shepherd who entered the forest together with his 200 sheep. They were never found again. People have also been whispering stories about a 5-year-old girl who disappeared one day. She re-emerged one day, 5 years later, wearing the same clothes as the day she went missing. Plus, she hadn't aged a day. There are people who entered the forest and did manage to return, but with severe burns, high fever, and some other health issues they didn't have before. Some were sure that happened because the subsoil had lots of natural uranium with a high level of radioactivity. And according to others, it's not unusual that you come to this forest and feel like someone's watching you or your electronic devices just switch off. And now, here's something that's not a legend. The forest has a rich history. Some sources say it was home to the oldest settlement in Romania, dating all the way back to 6,500 BCE. Trees themselves are pretty mysterious. They grow in creepy spirals or have some unexpected zigzag patterns. Even though some scientists have come there to explore this phenomenon, they couldn't find the answer to why they're like this. It seems as if trees are twisting their limbs so they can reach out and grab you when you're not looking. And that's what's interesting. Each of these twisted trees spirals in a clockwise direction. But legends say lots of inexplicable things have happened in a specific part of the forest where you can't find trees or any other types of vegetation. It's a perfect circle called the clearing. The perfect name for a horror movie inspired by all these stories. The soil in this area with no vegetation has been tested, and no one has found any weird stuff or anomalies that could potentially stop plants from growing there. Some locals believe the forest has positive energy, which is why it's good to make a wish there. But many more people let their imagination run wild, telling stories about paranormal activities happening there, like mysterious spheres popping out in the middle of the forest or extraterrestrial lights. Either way, you and your castle can step aside, Dracula, because you're not the only scary story from Transylvania. Here's another reason you won't be able to sleep well tonight. The Isla de las Muñecas, or the Island of the Dolls. In the middle of the eerie and murky waters of canals near Mexico City, there's a small island. It may look charming at first, until you realize it's home to hundreds of dolls hanging from the trees and scattered throughout the overgrown vegetation. These dolls are old and decaying. They've lost their color over time, and their once cheerful faces are now twisted into expressions of despair and horror. There is a sad story behind this disturbing place. It says the island used to be home to a reclusive man who left his family more than 50 years ago to live alone on the island. He started obsessively collecting dolls that were lost in the canal. The story says he even traded products he grew to locals to get more dolls. The man didn't clean these dolls nor show any interest in fixing them. He would just decorate his island with them regardless of the state in which he found them. Even those that looked good ended up ruined due to winds and rain. They weren't just outside. His cabin was full of these scary dolls too. Many people were terrified of this place, claiming it was cursed, but others believed the dolls safeguarded the island. Moving to the suburbs of North London, where you can find the mysterious Highgate Cemetery. It's definitely not a typical resting place for the dearly departed. This cemetery has so many peculiar graves, including those of Karl Marx and Douglas Adams. But that's not what draws visitors to its gates. People come there because of the legends claiming that this place is haunted by all sorts of spooky creatures, including vampires. Yup, stories about shadowy figures hovering over graves with glowing red eyes and sharp fangs never get boring. But this place wasn't always this creepy. It was established in the middle of the 19th century, once neglected and overgrown with crumbling monuments and vegetation that seemed to swallow up graves. But these legends became popular along with the place itself in the 1970s, after the cemetery had appeared in several horror movies. Some visitors there are even self-proclaimed vampire hunters. There's this peaceful and charming village called Pluckley, just a short drive away from London. At least that's what it seems at first sight. People whisper Pluckley could be the most haunted village in England. As you go through its winding streets, you'll come across many spots legends say are haunted. Many of them are connected to the Daring family, which held the title of Lords of the Manor for over 4 centuries. What gives the sense of old times is the round-topped windows on many buildings. Legend has it, hundreds of years ago, Lord Daring escaped when his enemies captured him. He jumped through one of these windows head first. In commemoration of this pretty daring act, every window in the manor house and the village was made in the same style. Even though the manor house burned down in 1951, the legacy of Lord Daring's escape lives on in the charming village of Pluckley. Some say Pluckley is surrounded by the so-called Screaming Wood. There are many legends about paranormal events that have occurred there. There are nice walking trails in this wood, but to be honest, I'd only be brave enough to hit them during the day. And how about the Crooked Forest? It's in Poland, and it consists of 400 pine trees whose trunks take a sharp 90-degree turn and then become weirdly curved, like the letter J. Someone planted them in the early 1930s, but it's still not completely clear how all these trees got the same curve. One scientist said this looked like a typical response to gravity. Plants have a special mechanism that allows them to reorient themselves when the stem is horizontal to gravity. So, these trees may have been grown this way for making boats or furniture. Of course, human imagination goes way beyond science, so many tried to explain the existence of these trees with stories of spirits that possess these trees or mysterious creatures from space that made them this way. Okay, I'm on. Let me just grab my popcorn.
Are we really by ourselves in the universe? It's a daunting question that's been haunting us for centuries. No wonder scientists have tried to come up with all sorts of ideas as to why. One of the strangest theories concerning our lack of contact with other life forms is named the dark forest theory. Let's start small, well, sort of. We'll focus on our Milky Way for now to better understand this theory. Our cosmic neighborhood is a galactic wonderland, sprinkled with 200 billion twinkling stars and maybe around 100 billion planets. So let's get hypothetical for a moment and say a tiny part of those habitats hosts life. Further, out of those life-bearing planets, a few might have evolved into intelligent beings. Given that, you'd think we'd be knee-deep in weird-looking neighbors, some of whom might be actively trying to find us or might just be out there, waiting to be discovered. Now, let's put a little science into this science fiction scenario. We have something called the Drake equation, which is a kind of universal roll call that estimates how many smart civilizations could pop up in our galaxy. You can think of this equation as the super smart roadmap. By playing around with a few important factors, the equation hints that there should be around 20 civilizations just in our galactic backyard. So why haven't we stumbled upon any yet? This theory isn't an easy task. It's a mixed bag of multiple variables, like the average number of planets per solar system that could potentially host life, or the rate at which stars suitable for intelligent life are formed. A tricky part here is that astronomers have yet to solidify the exact values of these variables, which means our calculations are just approximations for now. But back to the Milky Way, shall we? Feed in our hypothetical assumptions, crunch the numbers, and you get at least 20 civilizations. Yet somehow, our cosmic switchboard remains weirdly silent. How come? This radio silence has its own name, too, the Fermi paradox, named after the guy who first thought, "Hey, where is everybody?" over 50 years ago. Since then, we've had a lot of different theories trying to solve this mystery, all tinkering with different aspects of the Drake equation. Some folks think the appearance of life is a rare event. Others think that getting from bacteria to advanced beings is the tricky part. Yet, some reckon that civilizations might either wipe themselves out after a short lifespan or never even get to invent something they could communicate with. But there's one theory that tops all others in its creepiness: the dark forest theory. According to it, the universe is a huge cosmic version of a haunted forest. And other types of creatures are out there, playing a game of hide and seek. They're intentionally keeping silent. Why? Well, the dark forest theory was best explained in a sci-fi novel, and the rationale goes something like this. For starters, every life form wants to stay alive. I'll buy that. If we go with that assumption, it's impossible to be sure whether other life forms might harm you if they get the chance. So, the safest bet is to take them out before they find the right time to do the same to you. Frankly speaking, it's the universe's version of the survival of the fittest. In this scenario, making contact with others becomes the most dangerous game, as it could lead to your location being traced and you being wiped out. How human. This results in everyone keeping quiet, a kind of universal shush, where every civilization tries to hide in utter cosmic silence. But hey, is this just an idea good for a thrilling novel, or does it have some real-world implications? Well, the theory was suggested by scientist David Brin as a possible explanation for the lack of radio evidence for non-Earth-like life. He went as far as imagining it would be robots that would do the dirty work of wiping out civilizations. But how realistic is this theory anyway? Well, it doesn't require us to assume a lot of stuff about the behavior of all foreign civilizations. Just one advanced race behaving this way could explain our observed reality. And it might explain why we've not picked up any advanced radio chatter despite a century of eavesdropping. It's possible that other creatures like us are too terrified of being noticed and have gone radio silent on purpose. But, and it's a big but, like mine, it does base itself on the notion that other species share our level of risk aversion and logic, or that there's a rogue civilization out there, picking off anyone they perceive as a threat. And that's a pretty significant assumption. If that doesn't sound creepy, this next piece of information certainly will. For about a century now, we've been shouting our existence into the cosmos. If this theory proves to be correct, every other civilization within 100 light-years of us might be getting our signals and knowing exactly where we are. And if we have reasons to hide from them, as suggested by some like Stephen Hawking, we might already be in trouble. But what if this theory isn't true? What if, sooner than we'd like to imagine, weird galactic creatures will indeed try to reach us? The truth is, most of us wouldn't even know what to do. Let's not get over ourselves. In fact, some scientists are tackling this issue head-on. For the first time since the 1980s, specialists are trying to cook up a how-to guide for when we inevitably bump into cosmic neighbors. For instance, some researchers believe we've got to do more than just worry about how these life forms could shake up our world. If they send any type of radio signals down here, we've got to think about our reply. What are we going to say? Hey, we're humans. Nice to meet you. Absolutely not. We've got to do better than that. See, the only plan we've had till now came from a rough blueprint dating from 1989. This guide is a bit wishy-washy on what to do when the entire world gets the outer worldly text. Mostly it says, hey, let's share the news with everyone. But then what? If we confirm it's legit, officials will need to ask the United Nations for advice. But hey, does the United Nations even have a plan? Maybe, who knows? We've been doing loads of space exploring lately. Some say we've stumbled upon water on Mars. Others are sure we've spotted some planets that could be twins to Earth. So, the idea of finding life elsewhere isn't that far-fetched. But even after 100 years of trying to chat with cosmic beings, it's still a one-sided conversation. This new protocol isn't just about chatting up outsiders. It's also going to act as our cosmic voicemail, checking messages from outer space. It aims not just to decode the external lingo. It's also planning to figure out what these messages could mean for us. The plan is also to draft reports about how different policies could impact us and set up guidelines on how to respond to these space texts. So, will we ever get a message from our cosmic mates? Only time will tell. But what we do know is that we just can't wing it. We can't be caught off guard and start a planet-wide frenzy when we get that otherworldly WhatsApp. We gotta have a plan, and we gotta have it ready for when we're face-to-face with the real deal. I mean, we've come across a lot of potential such sightings, but none of them proved to be genuine. On that note, U.S. authorities checked over 100 cases of weird stuff going on in the skies. I'll spare you the details, but not one green creature was ever found. More like drones and similar stuff floating around. So, as we stand on the cusp of this potentially game-changing event, we must strive to be prepared. Whether our intergalactic neighbors drop us a text tomorrow or centuries from now, we need a plan. After all, this could change everything we know about our universe and our place within it.
For centuries, people believed that all swans were white because that was all they had ever seen. They thought it was a universal truth. Then one day, someone discovered a black swan. It was a surprising and unexpected event because it went against what everyone believed. So yeah, the theory is named after this idea of a rare and unpredictable event that goes against our assumptions and expectations. It isn't related to the Darren Aronofsky movie. You know, the one starring Natalie Portman as a committed dancer? Nassim Nicholas Taleb is the person who named this theory. He suggested that these types of super rare and unexpected events are impossible to predict, but they can have a massive impact on individuals, businesses, and societies. The theory was originally used to explain financial markets, but has found its way into various fields. Taleb calls those extremely rare events black swans. Now, these events are so rare that the usual tools of probability and prediction, like the normal distribution, don't really work. They rely on large populations and past data, which we don't have for rare events. So, trying to use statistics based on the past won't help us predict black swans. Let's dive into some examples of past black swan events. The rise of the internet is actually a great example. It's now hard to imagine a time when people couldn't Google their burning questions or watch funny cat videos online. The internet's growth and impact caught many by surprise. It transformed the way we communicate, access information, and even buy fluffy socks without leaving the couch. A digital revolution nobody truly saw coming. Recently, we found an infant black swan on the internet, the emergence of cryptocurrencies. Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies created new forms of decentralized digital currency and disrupted traditional financial systems. Then we have the invention of smartphones. Picture a world where phones were chunky, had buttons, and only made calls. Suddenly, boom! Smartphones turned everyone into walking wizards with tiny devices in their pockets. From taking selfies to driving with GPS, these pocket-sized marvels changed the game, surprising us all with their incredible capabilities. Here we can also mention the rise of social media. The emergence of platforms like Instagram revolutionized communication, enabling people to connect and share information globally. The creation of the internal combustion engine was a game changer too. Long ago, horses trotted along the streets, leaving a different kind of horsepower behind. But then, ta-da! The internal combustion engine roared to life, propelling cars and transforming transportation forever. Who would have thought that a mechanical contraption could replace our equine friends and pave the way for road trips and drive-thrus? What about black swans related to our bodies, like decoding DNA? Once upon a time, DNA was a mysterious code, like a secret language of life itself. Then, science unraveled its secrets, revealing the blueprint that makes us who we are. This groundbreaking discovery in genetics opened doors to medical advancements and personalized medicine. Imagine you're a scientist working in a lab. One day, you forget to clean up your petri dishes. You know, those plastic or glass things commonly used for growing microorganisms. Then, you leave for a vacation. When you return, you find a happy accident. A mold called penicillin has grown on one of the dishes and exterminated the bacteria around it. That's what happened to Alexander Fleming. This accidental encounter with mold led to the discovery of penicillin. Hello, one of the most important medications in history. At the time, bacterial infections were a major threat to human health. Fleming's chance observation opened the door to a whole new way of fighting infections and revolutionized medicine. Now let's take a peek at Europe in the 14th to 17th centuries. It was like a scene from a historical movie. People are emerging from the Dark Ages, embracing newfound knowledge and experiencing an explosion of creativity. This period is none other than the Renaissance. It's a black swan too, because during that time, there was a tremendous surge in artistic, scientific, and philosophical achievements. Incredible minds like Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, and Galileo were pushing the boundaries of human knowledge. The Renaissance was like a giant wake-up call for Europe, shaking off the cobwebs of the past and embracing a new way of thinking. It was a black swan event because it changed the course of history and ushered in a period of immense progress and innovation. It reminds us that sometimes, out of the blue, a wave of inspiration and brilliance can transform the world. Let's take a step back, or 1,000 steps further, and consider the moon landing. The Apollo 11 moon landing in 1969 was an extraordinary feat of human achievement and a positive black swan event. It showed humanity's potential for exploration and scientific advancement, inspiring generations and pushing the boundaries of what was deemed possible. Not all black swans are good and positive though. When it comes to the stock market, a black swan event is like a super rare market crash that goes way beyond what anyone could expect. We're talking about events that statistically should hardly ever happen. The Great Depression is a classic example of a black swan event. It happened in 1929, but its effects lasted for a long time. The economy was booming with happy days. Then, the stock market crashed and everything went haywire. It was almost impossible to predict, like trying to guess the lottery numbers but on a global scale. The world had never seen such a massive economic meltdown. At its peak, 25% of Americans found themselves without a job. The economy took a nosedive. The US GDP dropped by 30%. Over 9,000 banks waved the white flag and said, we're out. Oh, and there's something called a gray swan event, too. It's not as rare as a black swan, but it's still an outlier. The good news is that gray swans are a bit more predictable than black swans, so we can better prepare for them and take some measures to protect ourselves. Let's play a little thought game. Imagine we're weighing a bunch of people, and one of them happens to be the heaviest person in the world. Even if that person weighs 2,000 pounds, it doesn't really make a big difference in the overall average weight of everyone we weigh. It's like a drop in the bucket. This shows that extreme outliers like this super heavy person don't have a huge impact on the average. Now let's do a similar experiment, but this time with wealth. We gather a group of people, including one billionaire. What if that billionaire's wealth is 99% of the total group's wealth? Unlike the weight example here, the outlier dominates everything else. This is what Taleb calls extremistan, where a small number of people have a huge portion of wealth, while others have very little. Taleb argues that the modern world operates more like money. It's mostly digital and not constrained by physical or biological limits. While most people don't make a lot of money, a few can make a ton. The same applies to other areas like music, book sales, and more. This winner-take-all system rewards a small number of individuals disproportionately. We tend to believe we understand why these outliers exist. We think it's all about thinking outside the box, starting a revolutionary company, and working tirelessly. But what about those people who did all these things and failed? You don't often hear about them or find shelves full of books about their failures. There's a bias in the stories we hear and the information available to us. In the end, we became more vulnerable to black swans. So, whether it's a mold leading to life-saving antibiotics or an economic crisis, these events of the black swan theory show us that unexpected events can have impacts on our lives. By the way, the odds of being born are 1 in 400 trillion. For all we know and don't know, being born is an unimaginably improbable event that nobody could have truly foreseen. So if you're alive, in a sense, you're a black swan too.
"84 million years ago. Many modern mammals, birds, insect groups, even the first flowering plants are already there. Dinosaurs are still roaming around. They have around 20 million years left before the asteroid. T-Rex, a fearless hunter, becomes the king of the dinosaurs. And the Earth tilted by 12 degrees. Picture our planet as a chocolate truffle. The shell is hardened, the center is viscous, with semi-solid matter. Its top layer, the crust, consists of tectonic plates that are like puzzles. Continents and oceans come on top of these plates. 84 million years ago, the mantle and the crust started rotating around our planet's outer core, then going back. If you'd been able to see it from space, it would have seemed like the entire planet has tipped over on one side. Today, it would have moved New York City to where Florida is. Let's say our planet is like a spinning top. It whirls perfectly if the weight on the top is evenly distributed. But if you move some of the weight to one side, it makes it tilt. It may have been caused by the moving of the tectonic plates and one of them sinking under another. We might be drinking water older than our solar system. Some scientists think the water we have on Earth may have come from ice specks that were floating in some sort of a space cloud more than 4.5 billion years ago. Lakes aren't always peaceful and relaxing. They can also explode. It happens when there are volcanic gases under the surface that can burst, rise to the surface, and cause big damage. The Earth's rotation is slowly going through time. Every year, the moon gets a little bit of energy from our planet and slowly drifts farther away from it. These two things are making our day longer, but really slowly, around 1.4 milliseconds every 100 years. That means when dinosaurs were around, the day was 23 hours long. Our planet used to be purple. One theory says ancient microbes didn't rely on chlorophyll to absorb the sun, but on different molecules. They absorbed green light and then reflected back a nice purple color. Every time you take a dip in the ocean, remember you're swimming above more than $700 trillion worth of gold. Not on the ocean floor waiting for someone to get it out, but in tiny particles dispersed in the water. The deepest place on our planet is the Mariana Trench, a spot in the Pacific Ocean, 36,201 feet under sea level. But the deepest place that's not covered in the ocean is in Antarctica. Technically, it's hidden below thick and deep layers of ice, goes more than 8,300 feet below sea level. There are 60 tons of dust falling from space to our planet every day. You probably inhale a pretty good amount of this cosmic dust while just going to work. It's dust, small particles from comets, meteorites, and some other space bodies. Dalal, Ethiopia, is the hottest inhabited place on our planet. Between 1960 and 1966, the temperature was 106 degrees Fahrenheit, and even in the wintertime, the temperature goes up to 98 degrees Fahrenheit on average. 8 minutes and 20 seconds. That's the time sunlight needs to travel from the sun to our planet. It's still not that much compared to what it takes for the light to reach Pluto. 5.5 hours. Almost 70% of the fresh water we have in this world is held in ice sheets and glaciers. More than 96% of the total amount of water on Earth is in the oceans. The Earth is like some sort of big magnet. Its inner core is actually a sphere made of solid iron, with liquid iron surrounding it. All those variations and changes in density and temperature create some sort of force, which makes the iron produce electrical currents. They are lined up by the planet's spin, and together, they create a magnetic field. There are many stars in the Milky Way, 100 billion, but way more trees on our planet alone, around 3 trillion. You can tell how old the tree you're looking at is by its rings. They can also tell you more about the conditions of a given year, too. When these rings are thin, there was a drought, while the thick ones say it was a rainy period. Earth is a magical planet where even rocks can walk, at least some of them, in Death Valley, California. They leave trails so you can record the path they've passed. Some of those biggest rocks have left tracks behind up to 1,500 feet long. Smooth-bottomed rocks wander around, while those with rough surfaces tend to leave straight tracks. The world that surrounds us consists of atoms, and they seem to be solid. But 99.99% of them are just empty space. An atom is just a really small nucleus and a cloud of electrons surrounding it. These electrons are particles, but they act like waves. They don't exist in one point but are spread over a range of probabilities and occupy lots of space. Take the empty space in our atoms, and all the humans could fit in a really tight space like the volume of a sugar cube. Australia is slowly shifting north, 2.75 inches per year because of tectonic movements. Australia is one of the top continental tectonic plates that move faster than others. You'd need 400,000 moons to reach the level of brightness the sun has. Sounds a lot at first, but the moon only reflects the light coming from the sun. It doesn't make its own. And even though that's not enough, its brightness depends on the exact angle between the sun, moon, and the Earth. The planet we live on used to have 2 moons, or at least some scientists believe so. They figure the side of the moon that faces the Earth is relatively flat and low, while the other side is way thicker and crustier. The theory says that there used to be the second moon that collided with the thicker side. Some believe there's still a second moon. It could be not a giant space body we see clearly in the sky, but some sort of a small asteroid pulled into the Earth's orbit. Air doesn't mostly consist of oxygen. Almost 78% of it is nitrogen. If you want to see some pretty steep rocks, go to Canada, Auyuituk National Park. It has the biggest vertical drop in Canada, the tallest and the steepest cliff, with 105 degrees of overhang and 4,000 feet of rock. A team of 4 American men finally made it to the top in 1985, although there were 30 attempts for that before. It took them 33 days to get up. The Pacific, Atlantic, Indian, and Arctic are the 4 world's oceans. The 5th is confirmed to be the Southern Ocean. It's not defined by the continents around it, but by its Antarctic current that goes from west to east. Research shows this current was created more than 30 million years ago when South America and Antarctica had separated. This allowed water to flow around the bottom of the ocean without any barriers. Melting glaciers and ice sheets means more water in the oceans. It adds the extra weight of all that liquid pressing down the sea bottom, making it sink. The Earth's surface looks solid and kinda permanent, But every 500 million years, it goes through a process of regeneration. Tectonic plates crash into each other. Continental crust creates pressure on the oceanic crust, and that pressure activates the volcanoes. Through time, all this results in regenerating and replacing a majority of the Earth's surface, just like our body regenerates skin cells, replacing old with new ones. Out of all planets in the solar system, Earth is the only one with the outer crust that's broken up into huge surfaces we call tectonic plates. This is an important process that allows the formation of oceanic trenches and mountains, and also helps with protecting the Earth. When microscopic planets that live in the ocean are gone, they fall down to the bottom. The remnants go back into the interior of our planet and get recycled, and eventually end up in the atmosphere, protecting us from overheating and turning into Venus, the hottest planet in our solar system.
From the tiniest ants to the mightiest galaxies, why do things work the way they do? If we imagine the universe as a giant puzzle, we already found some important pieces: electromagnetism, gravity, tiny particles, and so on. But even with all this, we can't get the full picture. We still can't figure out how everything works. What we're trying to find is the theory of everything. This is the mysterious theory that should be able to fit everything in our world together. For years, brilliant minds like Isaac Newton, Albert Einstein, Niels Bohr, and many others tried to derive this theory. But as you can imagine, it's not a simple task. Albert Einstein was one of the first to get very close to the answer. He spent his entire life watching and analyzing the world. As a result, he came up with his most famous equation: E equals mc squared. This equation tells us how energy and mass are connected. Energy can turn into matter and vice versa. But that's not enough, so he created his theories of relativity. One was called special gravity. It says nothing can go faster than light, and time can stretch or shrink depending on how fast you're moving. Then, he combined it with general relativity, which introduced gravity into the equation. He thought of gravity as the universe's way of bending space and time. Just like a fabric stretches when you place a heavy ball on it, space-time stretches when we place things like planets in it. This effect is what we call gravity. Einstein also wanted to connect gravity with the other forces, like electricity and magnetism. That way, everything could be together in harmony. And there were scientists who decided to help him with that. Their names were Theodore Kaluza and Oskar Klein. In the 1920s, they decided that it would be cool to add extra dimensions to our universe. Electromagnetism explained how electricity and magnetism work together. And now, Einstein, Kaluza, and Klein wanted to add relativity to it, like mixing several flavors of ice cream to create a super delicious universe sundae. To make this wild idea work, Kaluza and Klein had to add a whole new dimension to our world. We usually think of our world as having 3 dimensions, like length, width, and height, plus time. But these scientists created the 5th dimension, although it's all tiny and hidden, so you couldn't spot it in your everyday life. All this gave us a more or less full picture of the world. Many even thought that Einstein did it, found the theory of everything. But if only things were that simple. Unfortunately, even though Einstein was a genius, he couldn't unite everything. You know what screwed things up for him? Quantum mechanics. Quantum world turned out to be insane. When we looked at the particles, we learned that they could do magical tricks. For example, they could be in 2 places at once, or disappear and reappear again out of nowhere. Einstein couldn't explain that. He wanted things to be logical and predictable, like knowing exactly where a particle is and how fast it's going. But quantum mechanics showed that our world is much more complicated, weird, and random than what we thought. But even though Einstein didn't explain absolutely everything, his legacy still lives on. Today, scientists are picking up where he left off. So how close have we gotten to the theory of everything since then? Well, quantum mechanics tried to nominate its candidate, string theory. This hero emerged in the 1980s. Quantum physics pals had a wild idea. What if the tiniest bits of everything in our world weren't particles, but super tiny strings? Yeah, like guitar strings. Almost. They look like little dots to us, which is why we see them as tiny particles. But if we looked at them under the best microscope ever, they would look like little loops. In that case, everything in the universe is made up of these little vibrating strings. Just like different notes on a guitar string make different sounds, these tiny strings can vibrate in different ways. And each way they vibrate creates a different particle. One note might give us a particle we call an electron. Another vibration could be a particle like a photon, and so on. But there is another cool idea that string theory suggests. It suggests that our universe has more than just the usual 3 dimensions we can see, like up, down, left, right, and forward and backwards. What if there are extra hidden dimensions that these strings can wiggle in? And theorists say that they might be up to 10 or even 11 of these dimensions. At first, everyone thought that this was it. This could be the theory of everything. But, just like in the movies, when everyone thinks that they've defeated the villain, more problems pop up. String theory didn't fit the universe's rules discovered by Einstein. This is the last piece of the puzzle they've been trying to find for many years. If string theory supporters figure out how to connect their ideas with Einstein's theories of relativity, they'll finally be able to explain all the things ever. And they made some attempts. String theory began to divide into many branches. For example, it gave rise to the multiverse theory. Alright, we know that all the tiny strings can vibrate and wrap in different ways. There are many ways for each string to vibrate. The combination of their vibrations give many possible results. And there are trillions upon trillions of these strings. And just like one musical note can help to create different harmonics and songs, strings can create different versions of the universe. Each version might represent a universe with its own set of physical laws and properties. You probably heard about the parallel worlds. Well, it's a real scientific concept. The multiverse theory says that our world isn't the only one. There's an infinite number of universes and their number is constantly growing. Let's say you're baking cookies. In one universe, you make chocolate chip cookies. In another universe, you make oatmeal raisin cookies. And yet, in another universe, you make them with peanut butter. Even for such a small decision, there are a lot of parallel worlds. Something like this is very hard to even imagine. And these are only those universes that are similar to ours, where identical copies of us live. Some universes might be completely different. They might have different constants of nature, like the strength of gravity or the speed of light. They might have things that we can't even think about. Of course, this is just another theory. There's still a big debate about it in the world. It's a fascinating idea, but there's no way for us to test it with our current technologies. These universes, even if they exist, are way beyond our reach. One of them is called M theory. It was proposed in the 90s by an awesome scientist, Edward Witten. M theory is like a super advanced version of string theory. Just like in regular string theory, it suggests that everything in the universe is made up of tiny vibrating strings. But M theory says that these strings aren't the only things out there. There are also things called brains, short for membranes. Imagine these brains like sheets or surfaces that exist in higher dimensions. We can't see them, but they can interact with the strings in interesting ways. M theory was basically juggling other theories, trying to solve the problem in everything. It tried to unite every version of string theory into one big idea, and also combine all this with Einstein's ideas somehow. It also high-fived Stephen Hawking's ideas about black holes along the way. But even with M theory, we're not at the finish line. No matter how hard we try, we still can't explain absolutely everything. The biggest problem is trying to unite relativity with quantum mechanics. So far, no one could do this. These were our attempts to come up with a theory of everything so far. Will we be able to derive it one day? Who knows? There are many tricky pieces still missing, but we keep learning and creating new tools to explore our world. And maybe one day, we'll finally find out the answer.
When you think of theme parks, you normally imagine laughter and fun times. But once they're closed and abandoned, well, that's a whole different story. Let's take a look at some of them. You decide to take a trip to New Orleans to visit Six Flags. When you arrive there, you discover the theme park is deserted. The sign that says "Closed for Storm" is still standing. You're feeling adventurous, so you let yourself pass the crackling gates. Is it chilly in here, or is it just me? You walk past a swimming pool, and it looks like there's someone in there. You get closer and, oh no, it's an alligator. Better run and leave that thing alone. You keep exploring the site. The park took inspiration from the city's French architecture, but today the buildings are dirty, the windows are all shattered, and there are unusual items everywhere. Say, what is this vintage rollerblade doing here? The park closed during the hurricane, and it was left standing under 7 feet of water. No wonder the metal rides are all rusty now. This carousel doesn't look too inviting to me. We'll have to come back another time. Hey, at least you got some cool-looking pictures, right? Let's make this next one even more exciting. Imagine you plan to visit Dada Park at night. Somewhere in the countryside of Belgium, you'll find a creepy theme park derelict from many years ago. You have nothing with you but the floodlight on your phone. You see the entrance of a bridge and start to make your way across. The bridge sways and creaks. Just FYI, you are crossing one of the longest hanging bridges in Europe. You made it through. Whew. The surrounding woods are terrifying, and several deserted attractions start popping up along the way. The forest has taken this twirling swing set. This huge slide would probably break if you tried to use it now. The park is in terrible condition. No wonder they closed it down due to security reasons. Best to leave it now and come back in the daylight. Your next stop is Wonderland Eurasia, also known as Anka Park in Turkey. The theme park opened in March 2019 but closed shortly after. Once inside the gigantic complex, you stumble upon what looks like an empty warehouse but ends up being an indoor roller coaster. Everything was left intact and is as good as new. You even take a quick sit on one of the roller coaster carts, perfectly lined up for the next ride. If you're feeling really adventurous, you can walk on the rails of the indoor coaster. Just be careful not to fall down. Oh, over there are the Flintstones. It's almost like a childhood deja vu here in the youngsters section of the park. On the horizon, you see what looks like the Jurassic World and decide to check it out. There are neglected statues of huge T-Rexes and fake skeletons of dinosaurs lying across the floor. Unlike the other derelict parks, everything here is new, which makes it all the more strange. Nara Dreamland was meant to be Japan's Disney World, but the project failed over time. Today, it's inhabited by moist ivies and strange birds. To get in, you'll pass a drawbridge and head into a pastel-colored castle. Your heart might beat faster than usual when you pass a fog-covered roller coaster. Was that meant to be the Matterhorn? Yup. Everything about this place says you shouldn't be there. Tossed on the park's floor, you'll see reels of tickets and misconfigured stuffed animals. How about walking into an empty diner? It's bizarre how the tables and stools are still in place. Strolling through what was once a gift shop, you'll see empty shelves and an old-school cash machine. I'd say you better leave before anything comes out of here. Now, if I say Joyland, what do you imagine? The name says it all, right? But if you decide to visit Joyland today, I bet you'll have a very chilling time. Down in Wichita, Kansas, you'll find a once famous but now empty theme park filled with eerie sights. A pale blue slide in the middle of a forest? Check. Empty warehouses straight out of a horror movie? Check. A wacky shack that looks truly wacky? You bet. But if you visit it on a good sunny day, I'd say the park is weird but still has some beauty. Joyland was built in the late 1940s. It carries a vintage aura that goes well with the neglected atmosphere. Hey, look at this rusty yellow Ferris wheel with a stripped ticket box in front. I dare say it's almost charming. The Magic Harbor Amusement Park is not that magical after all. Just outside of Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, you'll find an old theme park left to nature. Here, bumper cars are not bumping anymore. If you get into a hedge maze, you'll probably never find your way out of it. I'm not sure what you'll see running around amongst the rusty rides, so good luck if you're planning a visit. If you're looking for somewhere to cool down on a hot and sunny afternoon, how about Disney's River Country? Just kidding. You're definitely not going to want to get in the water there. The park was built in the 1970s and closed in 2001. Pay a visit to the Whitewater Rapids on foot instead of floating down the fake river. You'll have about 330 feet to stroll along a very bumpy pathway. Maybe you'll see hanging tires that served as swing sets out in the bay. You can even try zip lining if you trust the cable. To add a little more creepy to this story, the park was closed down due to a dangerous bacteria that thrived in warm bodies of water. Are you sure you don't fancy a swim? When you think Italy, I bet you think pasta and pizza, and a leaning tower somewhere. Well, in the south of Italy sits the empty Miragica amusement park. The entrance still says welcome, but people stopped coming a few years ago. The site is covered in grass everywhere. The toy-like architecture is still there. Beneath the forgotten rails of an open-air roller coaster, you can almost hear the screams of excitement of people on the ride. This part of the park is usually prohibited, but there's no one around to control that now. It might be scary to be here, but adrenaline sure is running high. This next theme park is vacant only during a certain time of the year, but it still gives the true heebie-jeebie vibes. You have to catch a train from the city and travel to the end of the line till you reach the park. Coney Island is a seasonal park, open only from the middle of spring to the middle of fall. If you want to catch its unnerving vibe, you have to visit in winter. Then, you'd walk through the rows of empty stalls with the fairy string lights still hanging above your head. It looks frozen in time as all the rides lay shut down. Speaking of which, sometimes it gets frozen for real. Under many inches of snow, Coney Island is a little less disturbing. Then again, snow does have that effect on landscapes, but the park is empty and deserted nonetheless. I bet it's a great photo op. Now, be sure to tell me in the comments which abandoned amusement park you found the creepiest. Hey, you know me, I won't be checking any of these out. I'll let you go first.
Shh, do you hear something? It's nothing, just water dripping. You're walking alone down a dark corridor with nothing but your phone lighting your way. You see a large figure at the end of the hallway. You can't make out what it is, but it's a large figure with broad shoulders and a lab coat. You pause and have nowhere to go but forward towards the figure or back to the staircase. Suddenly, the figure starts sprinting towards you. You freeze in your spot. 4 hours earlier. You and your two friends decided to sneak into an abandoned chemical plant to film some cool videos for social media. You were against the idea because it's creepy, but your friends insist that it will get many views and go viral. So you grab your bikes, flashlights, and some self-defensive gear and make your way there. It's nightfall, so you hook up your bike's flashlights and pedal off. After a couple of miles, you divert onto an off-road path through a thick forest until you reach a large steel fence encircling the plant. You and your friends have been here before, but you never went past the fence. Despite all the warning signs, you get out your pliers and start cutting the fence. The legend is that this plant was abandoned decades ago after operating at full capacity. Then, one day, an accident occurred, leading to a massive evacuation from the plant and the city around it. Ever since then, the plant was emptied. No health hazards are going on, but people who live in the town nearby have reported seeing things. Figures were moving in the shadows. Random lights flicker in the plant, even though no one is there. There have been reports of loud screams in the middle of the night. After hearing these stories, the hair on the back of your neck stands up, and you shudder with fear. Your friends, on the other hand, are giddy and excited. After cutting through the fence, you leave your bikes and make your way to the plant. You pass the parking lot with some cars parked in their designated place. Other cars look like they were abandoned, with the doors still open. You reach the entrance of the plant, but it's chained up. Your friends rattle it, but it won't budge. Well, I guess the adventure is over. But your friend takes a rock and smashes it through a window, and you and your friends climb through. You enter the plant, and it's pitch black. The floor is sticky, and the air is dusty. You whip out your flashlights and light up the room. It's covered in black material that's hard to distinguish. Some objects are tossed over, as if people were just trying to make it to the exit. So far, nothing seems that creepy. The plant is huge, so there'll be plenty of time to explore. Your friend gets out her phone and starts filming live on social media. She's narrating the whole trip, and many people are viewing it. They're commenting and sharing their thoughts. Suddenly, you hear a scream coming from deep within the building. You and your friends hug each other in fear and almost run out. But your friend recording what's happening insists you move forward. The path is long and confusing. You find a map of the plant that tells you where to go. You see that you're only in the reception lobby, and there are still plenty of places to go. The flickering lights come from the second floor in a room facing the town, which is not too far from where you're at. You move upstairs in a very slow attempt, but the stairs are unstable. After a few steps up, one of the stairs breaks, and your leg is caught up at the bottom, where you almost fall. Your friends help you up. You reach the second floor and try to find the room with the flickering lights. The only problem is that the lights go off randomly. Or maybe it's not so random. You decide to split up to cover more ground. Good thing you have walkie-talkies to communicate, but it's still creepy. You tiptoe into each room. The displaced objects you see show how the people just packed up and ran away. Each room is creepier than the next. You point your flashlight all over, trying to find some clues to anything that might explain anything. You get some static from your walkie-talkie, and it gets louder and louder. You can't turn it off. Then you hear some voice behind the static crackling noise. It doesn't sound like any of your friends. It says, in a high-pitched shriek. You almost drop your walkie-talkie, and then the lights in the room you're standing in start to flicker. You freak out and run outside to your friends. You bump into many objects and knock them down. Your friends rush to you to see what's happening. You explain everything to them, and they head to the room to see if it all makes sense. But they don't spot anything weird. The lights are not flickering, and the walkie-talkies are silent. Were you just imagining it? Your friend is still filming everything live. There are even more people hopping on the live stream. You don't want to waste any more time, so you and your friends go deeper into the plant. This time it's completely pitch black, since there aren't any windows around. It's creepy. You see some lab coats scattered across the floor, resembling people. There are rooms on each side of the wall with machines and gizmos. Most of the rooms are locked and need a passcode to enter. The only problem is that the power's out. The batteries of your flashlight begin to give out, so you switch to lights on your phones. Your friend is still filming live, but as you go deeper, the signal cuts out. Even walkie-talkies don't work. It's very damp, and the room is echoing with creepy sounds. Each step resonates around the extended hallway, making it sound like someone is stalking you. That's when you hear footsteps coming from one of the rooms. The legend says that there's a creature living here with extended arms, sharp teeth, and glowing red eyes. It wanders around the corridors, scratching the walls with its sharp claws. Some say it's lost and has been trying to find a way out, while others say it's a dog that found its way inside. Your friend records everything on her phone without going live to upload the footage later. Suddenly, you hear something you don't ever want to hear, scratching on the wall. You and your friends look at each other with your eyes popping out and run. You're again knocking over things and making a lot of noise. You reach a dead end. We're at the spot. You see the large figure with broad shoulders and what appears to be a lab coat. It starts racing towards you. You try all the doors in the hallway, and finally, one of them opens. You go inside and slam the door shut. The creature starts slamming on the door, trying to get in. You're recording this on your phone. You crawl to a glass window to see what it is, but you only get a glimpse of the creature fleeing. You lost your friends and your way. You want to get out of here. A map of the plant inside the room shows you the way out. You check to see if it's clear, and you head out. You take a picture of the map to see where to go, but you're going around in circles. You hear your friends outside and rush to them. They were trying to call you, but lost you when they scattered. You leave the plant, get on your bikes, and head back home. As you reach the main road outside the forest, you turn around to see if anything weird is happening at the plant. You see the lights flicker in the same room you were in. You shudder and go home. Don't worry, none of it was real. The lights flickering were just the battery-powered lamps randomly going off, and the creature that was supposedly chasing you was your friends pulling a prank on you. There's no creature there, and the other sounds you heard are some stray animals scared of all the commotion. The video got a lot of views and went viral on social media. However, someone pointed out a figure in the glass reflection during the live stream. What could it be?
You're hiking in the wilderness, looking for a safe spot to set up camp. All you can hear are leaves and branches cracking under your footsteps. Some squirrels are running up a tree over there. But suddenly, something unexpected happens. You notice something weird in the distance in between the trees. It kind of looks like a concrete structure of some sort. Weird. At this point, you're at least 20 miles deep in the woods, and there are no nearby towns or villages, as far as you know. So you decide to go off the trail with your friends to get a closer look. But as you get nearer, you realize that it's actually a 12-foot tall staircase, and it's leading to nowhere. What's it doing there in the middle of literally nowhere? And it doesn't even lead to anything. You put on your Sherlock Holmes cap and investigate. So maybe there used to be an old house or mansion here that collapsed over the years, and the only thing left is this staircase. But weirdly enough, after circling the bizarre structure, you realize there's no trace of any ruins or even foundations. It's like someone just sliced a staircase off their house, cake style, and plopped it here for no reason. Okay. You and your friends aren't really into getting a whole lot closer. Something feels wrong. The longer you look at this weird structure, the more you feel a super creepy presence. Something tells you you should probably leave the area as fast as possible. You can't explain the feeling or take your eyes off the creepy staircase. You take out your phone and snap some pictures. Then, after a lot of hesitation, you take a few steps closer and notice that the stairs don't seem to be all that ancient, a few decades old at best. There's moss growing out from some cracks. Your friends have had enough. They ditch you and run back off to the trail, leaving you alone on the staircase. You put your foot carefully on the first step. Wham! Adrenaline rush. As you ascend to the top, someone touches your shoulder. You jump and turn around. All you see is black. As weird as this sounds, discoveries of random staircases illogically found in the woods are surprisingly common. Some are made of wood, others are bricks or stones. Some look ancient, while others look like they were finished yesterday. The one thing they all have in common, they all lead to absolutely nowhere, and they're all found in super mysterious locations. One of the most famous ones is in Chesterfield, New Hampshire, a long medieval-looking staircase made of stones with Roman arches in the middle of the woods. It's believed to have been part of Madame Antoinette Sherry's castle. She was a big singer back in Paris. The castle dates back about 100 years, and it was later discovered again in 1962. This time, there was nothing but a staircase. Another mysterious ancient staircase dates back to 9,000 years ago. It's in a forest in Italy. It looks like a series of stairs that led to a tiny platform at the top. Why go through all the trouble of building the thing if it leads to nowhere? Well, some experts think it could have been some sort of ritual tower, but your guess is as good as theirs. Some of the more modern staircases found in the woods also have an added bonus. They come with their own urban legends. Gee, would that be a 2-story or 3-story staircase? One of the most popular stories comes from the Philippines, where a forest ranger called Torkik allegedly went out on one of his routine patrols to look for missing people deep in the local jungle. That's where he claims he found some seriously out-of-place stone staircases. They even had weird markings on them. To get a better look at what was around him, he decided to climb up one of them. Just then, he was approached by a vicious stray dog that forced him further up the stairs. A few hours later, he came back to the village. Only thing was, he had been missing for 5 years. Was that staircase a time-traveling portal? Another account allegedly dates back to the 1940s, around the time of the Roswell UFO mystery. A man who claimed to be a scientist was sent to assist in investigating one of the many animal-related cases that kept popping up. Little did he know, this 1 to 2 week investigation would end up lasting 6 months. His team encountered a random wooden staircase in the woods that seemed to emit some type of frequency. They camped around 100 feet from it that night, but the next morning, it vanished. All that was left was a black burn mark where the staircase was. 2 days later, it reappeared out of nowhere, 160 feet from its original location. The team wanted to get a sample of the wood to send it off to the lab. There was one problem. No matter how hard they tried, it was impossible to chip off a piece. The wood from the staircase was apparently indestructible. These weird mystery stairs have been around since ancient Cambodia. Right in the middle of the jungle is an abandoned 2,000-foot-long staircase leading to, nowhere. According to experts, this staircase was built about 1,000 years ago. They don't know for sure, but they think it led to an ancient city. Sadly, over the years, that city is now completely covered by the dense jungle. Maybe it was an important meeting spot for travelers and merchants coming from all over the continent. Well, back to your story. You feel a strange presence behind you. You turn around, probably one of your friends snuck up on you or something. But then you realize there was no one behind you. You're the only one around. You freak out. Something is definitely wrong here. So you rush down the stairs and bolt back to your friends, panting and startled. You start to tell your friends what happened, but they don't believe you. They think you're just trying to scare them even more. But the emotion on your face, it looks legit. There's real panic in your eyes, the kind you just can't fake. Shadow or wind or whatever that thing was, your fear's real. You all agree that you should stay away from the stairs, and it's probably best if you go back home, right now. I guess camping out there overnight just wasn't meant to be. As soon as you get home, you open your phone and check out your gallery. But no, you scroll through photo after photo. The staircase, it isn't there. None of the pictures have any staircases in them. Just a small, flat clearing with nothing but trees around, no weird shadows, nothing. Your friends have the same experience. Your eye twitches and you look over your left shoulder. You're in the safety of your own home, but you suddenly feel the same presence you felt on that staircase. Oh no! Everything goes black. But you can relax. Most of these stories are just urban legends, told to give you the heebie-jeebies. The internet has a way of spreading rumors faster than the speed of light. Most of these stairs might have even been built on purpose just recently. One weekend woodshop project, a couple of photos, and you too could be a sensation on every urban legend website. Then you just tear it down, take a photo to show it magically disappeared, and just like that, you're an internet superstar. But let's say you find some real stairs on your weekend camping trip. They're most likely the remnants from an old house or a cabin that got demolished or just collapsed after it was abandoned. Hey, it's 2021. There's a logical explanation for just about everything these days. That presence you felt was most likely your own mind playing tricks on you. When you see something in real life that looks like something you saw on a website or a scary movie, your mind starts to work overtime. and you can actually see something or feel something that's not even there. That's what some people say happens when you get hypnotized. You want to see something so bad, and you do. That's probably what happened. Or was it?